bop going on. I'm going to turn the music down just a little bit more. Actually, I'll go ahead and stop it. And just say again, welcome to everyone who is joining us today, February 23rd, 2023, the birthday of W.E.B. Du Bois. Tail end was still the heart of Black History Month, and a whole host of other things that are certainly worth sharing and worth knowing. And so I'm glad that you're here. We're going to give folks maybe another minute or so to continue signing in and all of that good stuff for our conversation with two of our fantastic DSC members, Linda and Rosie. And so I am glad to be here, glad that you all are here. So we'll do brief introductions in a moment. And as I told everyone on the front end, it's a great time. If you have not yet, grab a little bit of water, some tea, whatever, make yourself comfortable, get your pen and pad, your note paper, your tablet, whatever it is that you see Rosie is ready, so that we can learn together and listen together. So I'm gonna give it another minute or two, and I'm gonna pull the Fela Kuti back up to the fold, and then we'll get ready to start in just a second. So thank you all again for joining, and look forward to having y'all kicking with us in just a moment. And of course, the finesse to get the music never goes as smoothly as you think it will. All right, well, again, welcome, beautiful people. Glad that you are here, glad that you are in the space, and welcome to this fireside chat that is being co-hosted by us at the Dignity in Schools campaign, our anchor organization, Partners for Dignity and Rights, and more specifically, the New Social Contract Initiative, DSC members, Paterson Education Fund, and one of our movement comrades and colleagues, Race Forward. And so the four of us in varying ways have come together to put this together. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, but then we're going to really get out of the way and give the floor to Linda and Rosie from Paterson Education Fund for the work that they've been doing that is the product of, or rather is then gathered by a forthcoming report that has been put together by Partners for Dignity and Rights and Race Forward called Co-Governing Toward Multiracial Democracy. And in this particular piece, we're going to be doing a deep dive on the education framework, a part of that report that features Paterson Education Fund. But we don't need to do a deep dive into all that now because you're going to hear more about it from Linda and Rosie. But before we do that, we do want to give you all a 10,000-foot view, if you will, about what this report is, kind of some of the thinking behind it. Of course, this piece is a focus point of a larger body of work that has been put together by folks like Ben and Philippa, who is in the background, but with us nonetheless. And so I do want to bring forward Ben and Leah to give us a brief conversation and intro and introduce themselves and talk to us a little bit about what this thing is that we are about to get into. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it over to the very capable hands of Ben and Leah. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Tafari. Hey, everyone. My name is Ben Palmquist. I'm calling in from Oakland today. I go by he and they pronouns. And I'm super excited to be here. I've gotten to know Linda and Rosie working with them over the last year, and it's just been a real honor. And so excited to be here. And so Leah and I are just going to open things up here with a quick intro to both our organizations and the report. I'm going to share my screen here. Actually, make sure this is bigger. All right, can y'all see that? Yep, cool. Okay. So hopefully folks know a little bit about Partners for Dignity and Rights. We're the organization that anchors DSC. We're coming up on 20 years old, and our core work has really always built around deep partnerships with grassroots groups on the ground who are organizing for economic and social rights. And so our 4 core program areas historically have, of course, been education with DSC. We also anchor one additional national, actually an international network called the Worker-Driven Social Responsibility Network. And this really grew out of work with farm workers in the tomato fields of Florida, where workers' rights were being really denied in some pretty extreme ways. People were not being paid, they were facing sexual abuse and threats of deportation and things. And so what the farm workers figured out was they organized to force their employers, who were growers, big growers, to sign onto contracts by using consumer pressure through like fast food chains and grocery stores that are buying up tomatoes and forcing their employers to sign on and protect their rights, but actually in a really innovative way that puts workers at the center of that, rather than sort of just making demands on government to enforce their rights. Similarly, we also, the other areas we've worked a lot in are housing, including both public housing and community land trusts, and then healthcare. And so I actually work with some of our health justice partners in different states who are organizing for Medicaid for all, for Medicare for all, and for rights throughout the healthcare system. Leah, I'll pass it to you to do a quick intro.
Thanks, Ben. Well, first of all, thank you so much. Appreciation to the Dignity in Schools campaign, Partners for Dignity and Rights. My name is Leah OBS. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the Director of Policy and Strategy at Race Forward. And I'm beaming in from Brooklyn, Lenape, and Canarsie territory. And we've been thrilled to collaborate with Partners for Dignity and Rights, and have learned a ton from them and from Rosie and Linda and the folks on the ground in Paterson about what racial equity looks like in practice. Race Forward is a national racial justice organization. We are just about 40 years old. And we advance racial justice through some core strategies. One is movement capacity building. We work with, and this is my team, we work directly with grassroots movements to build capacity to engage in policy campaigns and other sort of power building strategies. We do original research, narrative and cultural strategy. And we have a sort of large body of work that's focused on transforming institutions. And that area of work houses our work with racial equity practitioners in government. And we have a number of local and regional county jurisdictions that are members of the network there called the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. So we're most known, I think, for our national conference, Facing Race, and our media outlet Color Lines. But we have other work that we're doing. One of them is also, you might be familiar with the HEAL campaign, Honest Education and Leadership. This is our campaign to fight the attacks on critical race theory in in the school system. My background is in community organizing, and I'm on the movement capacity building team. And again, we've been excited to work on this report and bring the different organizations' strengths and networks together to pull together this body of work on co-governance. So I think at this point, I'll pass it back to you, Ben.
Great, thank you. So just briefly, Tafari mentioned this is sort of, we've been having this program we're calling a new social contract for a few years. And so we started this up around 2017, 2018, out of sort of all the work we've been doing with DOC members and other folks around the country, and recognizing that there are actually a lot of parallels between whether people were organizing within the school system or labor or healthcare or other spaces, that there were a lot of commonalities in sort of the visions and demands and strategies that folks were organizing around. So we first put out a report in 2018 that sort of lifted up a lot of the demands, the policy demands that people were organizing around. And so things like jobs for all, postal banking, participatory budgeting, and then teamed up with Race Forward shortly after that. And with Leah and other folks, we're starting to look at what are the different themes that we're really seeing emerging in the work, and where can we sort of continue to support what folks are doing on the ground and amplify that. And so we started focusing in on this sort of set of things that, you know, community control, self-determination, political and economic democracy, sovereignty, co-governance, self-governance, all these sort of overlapping things that we really saw people in DOC and many other spaces really sort of having not just as talking points, but as really central parts of their vision, right, for the world we wanted to see. And so we're looking in particular through a racial justice lens and a human rights lens at what are the things that communities of color in particular are trying to build from the ground up. And although there's some things like worker co-ops or food sovereignty efforts that are really working separately from government, most of the demands folks are organizing around, there's really a role for government in some ways. Sometimes it's sort of creating a policy framework that then structures ways in which people can go, you know, the institutions we live in, the ways that they're shaped. And in other cases, governments actually sort of has a seat at the table, right? Sometimes they're friendly, sometimes we're sort of antagonistic, but like there's often a role for, sometimes it's legislators or elected officials, and sometimes it's staff and agencies or appointees, right? But there's often an important role for government to sort of set the rules that everybody's working under, administering programs or whole systems like school systems, and hopefully steering funding to where it's needed, right? Although there's a lot of fights over that. So we decided to dig into this theme of co-governance, and then started talking to people and looking around and trying to figure out, you know, who's doing great work that maybe hasn't got enough attention. And we were very excited to lift up the work in Paterson. And where might there be gaps in the field and sort of our collective knowledge that we can sort of share lessons across localities, right, from the great stuff people are doing. So just, I'll close here and pass it back to Leah, just to sort of give us a definition to open up with of co-governance, because I think one of the things we learned is not everybody's using the same terminology, and that's fine. We're not trying to put everything in a box, and we're not just being cheerleaders for co-governance across the board, but it's helpful to have some terms to use together. So this is sort of a definition we came up with in writing the report. Co-governance is a collection of participatory models and practices in which government and communities work together through formal and informal structures to make collective policy decisions, co-create programs to meet community needs, and ensure those policies and programs are implemented. Again, that might be very friendly and close. It might be more antagonistic, but some way in which there's a formal structure. So it's not just about us voting and elected officials who make the decision. What we're trying to do in co-governance, right, is actually give people who are directly affected, students, parents, patients, residents, incarcerated folks, whoever it is, some actual role in decision making and running things.
Great. So just to spend a quick minute or two on the report and what you can expect. Again, it's called Co-Governing Toward Multiracial Democracy. And again, our thinking about democracy, as Ben was saying, is not so much the kind of like voting once every 2 or 4 years, but actively participating in helping shape the institutions, the decisions that impact our everyday lives. We have 3 incredible case studies that we've gone in depth with these organizers. And of course, we'll hear from Rosie and Linda today about the restorative practices that they've been able to vision and implement in Paterson, New Jersey. Our other 2 case studies are in Jackson, Mississippi. They have a long tradition in Black communities in the South and other parts of the country of people's assemblies, which are mass gatherings, mass community gatherings, where they learn about the conditions and issues of the community and propose solutions. So that's a powerful example that they've been able to work on to address issues like water infrastructure and policing. The other case study is on workers' rights, and the organization Chinese Progressive Association in San Francisco that organizes factory workers and restaurant workers. And they've been able to establish some workers' rights there, essential workers' rights, and then get those passed into law and then work with local government to implement those laws. So those are the 3 in-depth case studies. We also wanted to situate this work within within the movement traditions, strong movement traditions in this country, particularly Black liberation movements, and immigrant rights movements and other movements of oppressed peoples. And we situate the report and provide foundation here with a section on the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party and Fannie Lou Hamer and the work there. And we also have a section of the report that's called Participatory Democracy and Co-Governance Models Across the Country, because we wanted to show that beyond the case studies, that there was a real breadth of this work across the country. So you'll see this map that shows some of the organizing models that we highlight in the report. They're sort of brief descriptions of the work, but are also various models of organizations that are in some degree of partnership and work with local governments. So finally, there are some lessons that we wanted to highlight for organizers and local governments. And I know Rosie and Linda will get into some of those lessons now based on their extensive experience to transform culture and policy in Paterson. But we wanted the report to be of practical use to organizers and local governments who are working on racial equity and wanting to really put it into policy and practice wherever they're situated. So we just wanted to encourage folks to read the report if you can, be in conversation with us around some of these lessons, how impactful this work is for you all, what some of the challenges are. And we definitely want to invite everybody and encourage everybody, if you are available, to attend our webinar on Tuesday. We're launching our report on Tuesday with this webinar, and we're featuring each of our case study organizations and organizers from these groups. Brooke Floyd is from the People's Advocacy Institute in Jackson, Mississippi. Rosie, who you'll hear from today, will be on the panel, as well as Shasan Liu, who's the executive director of the Chinese Progressive Association, and Ben will be moderating as well. So we invite everybody to please join the webinar, learn more about these incredible work going on with these 3 organizations and across the country. And we look forward to seeing you there and being in further conversation with you all.
Thank you so much, Ben and Leah. And so, yeah, today I'm playing Ben's role. So if you all don't like it, you get a second opportunity to have better hands on the 28th. So no, thank you very much, Leah and Ben, for that. And as I bring Linda and Rosie up to the fold for this fireside chat, I do want to do two quick housekeeping notes. One in the, I was about to say in the show notes, in the chat. There is a link that I just placed for registration for that event on the 28th. Please share that. That is a public facing one. So that is your friends, your family, your comrades, your enemies, organization. Swing them to the other side. Tell them to come through and learn a thing or two. And in addition to that, at the if you scroll up just a little bit, I actually attached a PDF of the Paterson and PEOC work for you to review when you registered. You should have gotten a link to that as well. If not, it's attached there. Friendly reminder, please don't share that publicly, and not because it's a secret, but because we are wanting to give it as a deep dive into things for you all. And towards that, let's get into the discussion. So Rosie and Linda, hello, thank you so much for joining us. And so I would love for you both to introduce yourselves. And as you do, I'm gonna create a frame and a container. And I would love for you all to introduce yourselves as a form of response to that. So the title of the section that Linda and Rosie's work is housed under is called Restorative Practice in Paterson, New Jersey, Gentle Pressure Applied Relentlessly. And I love that framing. It says that for years, the Paterson, New Jersey community struggled with an out-of-control disciplinary problem. There were 27 ways that students could be suspended for a level 1 infraction, with up to 70% of students getting suspended in 1 year. And so we're talking about really an out-of-control issue, not in terms of student behavior, but in terms of like a systemic failure that creates, just criminalizing policies. And Linda and Rosie, you both work with respective organizations and saw the same thing. And so, Linda, I want to start with you as you start to introduce yourself. So if you can tell us a little bit about what were the things that had you transition from just seeing the work or seeing the issue to moving you to work together with Rosie and with others to meet this challenge.
Well, thank you, Ari. Hi, my name is Linda Reed, Program Manager at Paterson Education Fund and organizer for Parent Education Organizing Council. And what got me started on this journey was my grandchildren. I had a granddaughter that was suspended 3 times in kindergarten. And I just felt that something was not right about that. Then we started looking at, I really wanted to make a change. I really wanted to see something change because I felt that she was just too young. And if she was being suspended, there were other kids being suspended as well. When we joined Dignity in School about 7, 8 years ago, one of the campaigns was Solutions, Not Suspension. And as I would talk to the different folks at the, when we would have those gatherings, and somebody said, well, why don't you look at the data? And that's what started this journey. We started looking at the data and found out that there was a large amount of children being suspended for minor infractions, rolling their eyes, sucking their teeth, just not even smiling at a teacher. If a teacher felt like the child was being disrespectful, they would get 3 days out of school. And what really, really pushed us hard into doing this work was when Every Student Succeed Act came along and New Jersey adopted the fifth
accountability measure.
Accountability measure was attendance. And we knew that we were going to be in trouble if our kids were being really suspended for that, along that line for just stupid stuff. So we took the campaign Solution Not Suspension and followed Dignity in Schools campaign that they had, and we just ran with that.
dig it, I dig it, I dig it. Now, thank you so much for an answer to that. Rosie, I am going to invite you to answer the same question from your perspective. What was it that got you into this particular line of work and connected you with, how did you and Linda find each other? Yeah, just tell us that story.
Sure. Hello, everyone. It's good to be here with you this evening. I'm Rosie Grant. I'm the Executive Director of Paterson Education Fund. I came to this work now 30 years ago because I had young children who were going to be students of Paterson Public Schools. And this job was offered, and I thought, well, what a great place to be a parent, to have this connection with the schools and this intimate knowledge. And when I went to my first parent meeting, when my daughter was in kindergarten, and they asked what I wanted, and I said I wanted her and her brother, when he came to the schools, to have a world-class education so that they could do whatever they want in life. I was laughed at by fellow parents who said, well, you better go somewhere else. And that really spurred me on to make sure that Paterson kids get the same kind of education that was offered in other spaces in New Jersey and across the country. So they're now 33 and 30, and they got the education that they needed to be fully contributing citizens. So that's kind of my entry into this work. 10 years ago, when the then executive director, the founding executive director, retired, I applied for the ED job and got it. And so Linda was a volunteer. Even before I came into this position, she was a volunteer with us with the organization. That's how we met. And when the program manager position opened up, she came on board at Paterson Education Fund. And it's been great working together over so many years. I think we're probably up to about 18 or 19 at this point.
18.
My entry into the restorative practices work actually came through Linda. We were doing the data analysis, looking at attendance, looking at suspension data, which when Linda did the first draft and presented it, the district said, oh no, that's wrong. And we said, but it's your data. We took it from the school progress report cards. It's what you gave to them that they then put into the report cards.
Exactly.
So they took a good look at the data and actually went back to the state and corrected some things, but it wasn't enough to correct. The data was what it was, and we needed to face it in order to grapple with it. And then Linda had gone to a Dignities in Schools event that I hadn't gone to, although we were both members. And the next time we went to, I think it was a membership meeting, she said, you have to go to this restorative practices circle, because she had experienced it and wanted me to see it. And I embraced it just as much as Linda did, and came back. And I know you're going to ask us some more questions, but started to build our knowledge around restorative practices and introduce it to other people in the community.
No, absolutely. Beautiful, beautiful. No, thank you both for your answers and for your work. And I guess you all should, I guess I should let myself come in here as well. There we go. And so let's actually continue in that direction. So Rosie, I'd actually love for you to continue, and then Linda come back in, because just talked about, the Dignity in Schools campaign, membership-based campaign that we're a part of. I'm staffed with, just been doing school to prison pipeline disruption work and dismantling work for a long time. And just like you're saying, in Paterson, New Jersey, and one of the things I really love about DSC is that it really is not a top-down organization. It really is a bottom-up in its aspiration and in its work, because you all weren't merely waiting around for some big box nonprofit to come in and say, hey, you should get into restorative justice or education justice. That work was already happening. You all were already leading where you were. And so you all used a lot of different strategies to get restorative practices into your school district. This is, of course, talking a little bit about the outcome, as we are going to backtrack and get into the work. But in many ways, you followed some of the work that DSC had put together, data gathering, sharing that data, the district saying that it's wrong, and then you not giving up there, but continuing to say, well, hey, no, we have some authority and some power and some expertise here as well, the relationships and the connections. But you used a really classic, like what people talk about as a inside outside strategy, you know, pushing on the outside, getting on the inside and applying pressure relentlessly there as well. And so can you talk a little bit more about how DSC relationships and resources supported you, but also where that wasn't enough or where you needed to figure out how to chart your own path towards getting RJ and restorative practices into Paterson schools?
Sure. We were introduced to the strategy through our DSC relationship, and we did have some funding from DSC to do our Solutions Not Suspension campaign. So we used some of that funding to get the training. The initial training that we did was we invited Mama Lynn from Chicago to come in and do a small group training with us, some principals and some community members. And as I talk about that, I want to talk about the importance of relationships. We've been in Paterson doing this work for 40 years for the organization, 30 for me, and about 20 for Linda. And what we've done over time is build these relationships with people, because people come and go, administrations come and go. So we kind of established ourselves as a constant in the community, as a keeper of the history, and through little things that we've done, you know, small mini grants or community conversation, facilitation, et cetera, we've built this relationship. And that's how we got the first group of people to the table for that first training. So we always say we're constant in a volatile environment. And we've gleaned so much from Dignities in Schools. We were always doing the relationship building. It's like a courtship. But what we learned from being DSC members is the importance of base building, the importance of maintaining these relationships, and some framework. Sometimes we're introduced to some frameworks and we go, oh, that's what we're doing. That fits with this program. And so DSC helped to build our knowledge. We also learned how to strategize, you know, how to run a campaign. So we talked with people before actually trying to do the work. And then we brought in examples, we brought in our colleagues, and the funding certainly helped us to do that. So the first piece of work when we released that data publicly was to do something about the discipline code. You talked about the many ways that kids could get suspended for level 1 infractions, like rolling your eyes, you know, or sucking your teeth, and you're suspended for 3 days. So the district, once they got through the shock and acknowledged that the data was right, thought we must do something about this. And they invited Linda and me as community partners to sit on a task force to rewrite the discipline policy. So that was our first policy win, is that we were able to pull apart the district's discipline policy and make some recommendations that were based on the DSC model code. That was our model for the new policy. And so that many years ago, maybe 6 or 7, restorative practices was written into the district policy for the first time. They used language that said interventions, prevention measures such as restorative practices and others. But I think that was the only one mentioned by name. They were doing PBSIS at the time.
Right.
So that was our first win. And then we had to make sure people understood what that meant. So there was more work to be done. We did restorative practice mini sessions, mini circles at parent-teacher conferences, PTO meetings. We did it in the community just to get people more familiar with the concept. And then when the superintendent, who the current superintendent was deputy at the time, and encouraged and helped us to enable this work. When she became the superintendent, she said, yes, let's do this district-wide. So this year is the first time that we're really trying to push this out to every school in Paterson, which is 52 schools. By June, we will have trained a team in every school in restorative practices in circle keeping. So I think I answered your question.
Yes, no, you absolutely did. You absolutely did. You answered that and a few others, and it was perfect. And I think that's part of the dynamic nature of this. Like organizing work is layered and overlaps, and it doesn't fit into our neat little boxes of prepared questions, because that's just not how life works. So you're absolute. So no, thank you. You answered it spot on. And so towards that same end, Linda, I would love to hear some of your perspective on that as well, in terms of, your relationship with DSC, and not that DSC is super important in terms of the storytelling, but in terms of the people that you met and related to, and then were like, hey, we got to do this. So if you could share a little bit about those partnerships, and maybe even some more of the local partnerships in the Paterson area that helped catalyze you all getting into those positions to be in the policy meeting rooms, the person that you encountered and all that kind of stuff. So Linda, if that makes sense, if you can share to that, I would be grateful. If not, I can try to reframe the question.
Okay, so the start, we had a lot of, I think we've been with Dignity in School for about 8-9 years now. And throughout that time, we actually got our first encounter with restorative practice was with Teachers Unite, when we had them to come over to Paterson, and they did a small circle training in our small office with some teachers and some community members at that one. And then we also had then it was Lynn who came in to do the training, which the staff, the principals are still talking about the work that they learned from her, and which they are still using in their schools now. And then we went to Portland for a week. We took a group of people because the district decided that, yes, this is what we want to do. So we had got some more folks involved in that.
And I just want to jump in and say that also was a DSC member, Portland Parent Union with Mama Sheila.
Yeah.
That did that training for a week.
Right. So Dignity in School has a lot of knowledge, a lot of folks that know, the strategies, and we learned from them all. We took what we could from each one of those groups and tailored it to fit Paterson's, I guess you said, mold, because Paterson is unique. We have some strange critters here, but
Talk about it a little bit. Talk about it. Bring us into Paterson.
So one of the strategies that we had to use, so we had to present, in order to get the district to talk about the change in the model codes, we had to convince them that this was the way to go. So we did some bribery. We knew we had to get to the school board members because they are the body that makes the final say so, whatever. So we had some lunches and we had some dinners. I
wouldn't call it bribery. It was relationship building.
Relationship building, exactly. After hours sometimes, but we did a little, talking to the folks that had the power to say, yes, let's make these changes, to see it our way, but we just had like that gentle pressure. We had to make them see it our way. And it worked, so sometimes you just gotta let them say no and yell and scream and do whatever they want to do. If they say they're not going to do it, but just constantly applying that pressure, gently applying the pressure, and they'll come around, because that's what happened when they changed the code of conduct policy. And it's just that, I don't know. I mean, it's learning. We learned from all of them, but every day it's learning. And every time, like I said, every time we do a circle, I learn something new, so it's like always being in school and never giving up.
And this too was a strategy we learned from DSC. We actually did a strategy chart, who could support us, who are our allies, who could stop this. And we met with those people one-on-one to make sure that they understood what it was and didn't try to stop it.
No, makes sense. No, makes a lot of sense. And I think this ties into just like what Ben and Leah were representing at the beginning of the call around the framing of, a co-governance model, even internally, because, you all had separate and connected organizations. You're working with other partners that are inside in terms of at the district level. You have to cultivate partners, what Linda calls, what I call good organizing. And like you're saying, had to, know where you could apply gentle pressure, where you could push harder, where you had to wait and see what happened. And so I would ask in that, and that's just the nature of organizing, because like you said, Rosie, like, what is consistent is your organization. What isn't consistent is the people that fill the places of institutions. So again, a district superintendent can be there for 15 years, they could be there for 15 months. And someone else comes in and it's a whole lot of power that one or a few groups of people have. And how do you shape those in ways that still respond to the changing needs of students, parents, families, education, learning. So no, that's really fantastic stuff. And so Rosie, as I come back to you, I would love for you to talk a little bit about in that organizing, how did you know and how did you all know that you were making progress? Like, what were the indices that you could say, yeah, I can tell we're getting some traction here, or maybe we need to change strategies. What did you look for to determine if that culture shift, as the report kind of talks about this culture shift, policy shift thing, what did you look for, or what did you see that had you noticed that you were making progress, since you all were making progress?
Okay, we talked about the policy shift. The culture shift was through observing what was happening in the community. And we were actually making a lot of progress in the data pre-pandemic. We're back to a high absenteeism, but we have to look at the new reports and figure out why, whether or not suspensions and expulsions are a part of that. But we noticed a change in schools. We noticed schools were calling us to say, hey, we heard you're doing restorative practices. And they would ask either, we had an infraction, can you come in and do a circle? Or can you teach us how to do circles? We also had interest from community organization. There's one community partner, a large organization, who said to us, we want you to train our entire staff in restorative practices. So that was the first time that we did an out of school practice. And then we had the county ask us to do a training for county social workers. And during pandemic, so we did this on Zoom and made sure that all the county children and family social workers who were having contact with our families were trained in restorative practices as well. And then we trained after school program. So that's the cultural shift that we saw, is that people were asking for it. It wasn't us pushing into spaces anymore. And then, of course, once the superintendent came in and finally this year, we've been working with the willing as far as the schools, but this year she said, let's do it district-wide. Everybody's doing restorative practices. And they did their thing inside the district, where they've now developed an evaluation model. So as we train, they will be doing surveys and interviews, et cetera, to find out whether or not it's working, how well they're using it, and if people are implementing it with fidelity.
With fidelity.
And this morning, Linda and I talked to a county official, and we're now going to do some more training in the community as a part of New Jersey creating a restorative hub in 4 cities, with Paterson as one of them. So that's the cultural shift that we were looking for, because we know that schools don't exist in a bubble. So it's wonderful to have restorative practices in the schools, but what about when the kids leave?
They go home. Right.
They go home, they go to after school spaces, they go to the playground, etc. And then there's a story, I don't know if I have enough time to tell, but okay, I'll tell the quick version. I met Dr. Glisson at that first training that Mama Lynn came in to do, but Linda already knew him and actually convinced him to come to the training. And God rest his soul, I'm talking about someone who's departed. COVID took him from us, but I still want to share his story. So he came because Miss Linda convinced him, applied relentlessly. Remember that gentle pressure applied relentlessly? Miss Linda convinced him that he should come check it out. And he came and he was on his phone and, you know, taking care of business at Eastside High School in Paterson. But he walked away somewhat convinced that this is the right thing to do, from you're out of here, strict discipline, to, okay, let's talk to the kids and find out what's going on with them. And when we organized the training for Portland, which was a 1-week immersion, he couldn't come, but he sent his people. And when they came back and they started implementing, he created a peace room in the high school, in an overcrowded high school. He took the in-school suspension trailer and made it into a peace room for circle practice. And then there was a fight between the Eastside and Teaneck football team.
No, it wasn't
Teaneck, Englewood.
Englewood.
And Dr. Glisson said, hey, and they both got suspended from the sports league for the rest of the season. But he said, hey, why don't we have some circle conversation with the two teams? And they did. The kids made friends. It came out that it was a misunderstanding. Somebody didn't interpret right, Spanish, English differential. And they went, oh, we have so much in common. They're more like us than not. So his peace room is now named the Dr. Glisson Peace Room at Eastside High School. And Eastside is fully immersed. They're rolling it out. We just went in and trained the disciplinarians at Eastside last month. And we've had wonderful feedback from them. So the conflicts continue because they're teenagers in an urban setting. However, restorative practices is being used as one of the tools and strategy to help to resolve these conflicts and keep kids in school. So that, to me, is the biggest piece of the culture shift.
No, thank you for that. By all means, Linda, jump in if you'd like to.
Okay, so another thing is, even though they may get suspended, they go to in-school suspension, and it used to be that they just sit there on their phones or whatever. That's not happening anymore. When they go to in-school suspension, they have to go to circle. So they have to figure out, why are you guys always coming, being suspended? So you have to get to the root of the problem in order to move on.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I remember a time when I was, my sophomore year in high school. I got suspended. I got suspended. I was supposed to get expelled. I'm forgetting in a fight. Hey, we can't heal if we're not transparent.
That's right.
and even that, not to get so much into my own story, but towards what you're saying, Rosie and Linda, like, it was the product of a misunderstanding, and in this case, it was a fellow student who was, I guess, embarrassed by my abilities on the basketball court, to say it briefly.
Yeah.
And so he pantsed me, which to me was like a violation. And I grew up in a household where my parents were very much on the don't, it's important for you to stand up for yourself. Don't start fights, but if you need to, finish them. And so I had a base in my background. So I remember I tried, like, hey, please, don't do that. And I'm 16, so I didn't say it quite as gently as I'm saying it now. And he did it again, which then, prompted me, my visceral reaction was to throw a punch. And and of course, things happen in the fight. And yeah, he and I were both supposed to get arrested that day. We're supposed to get suspended or expelled from school that day because that was the policy of the district in this rural Georgia school. And only because of who I was in the school at the time did the people in the place say, oh, well, we know Tafari. We know that this is out of character for him. What happened? And in telling the story, and even with the gentleman who had, kind of catalyzed the event, they asked me straight up, like, well, what do you want to do with him? I said, well, we just had a misunderstanding. Like, so he doesn't need to get expelled either. If we, as long as there's not a threat between us anymore, I don't have any beef with you. And he was like, I don't have any beef with you. And so we ended up both just getting suspended as opposed to expelled, which was abnormal per the policy. So I share that to say that just what you're saying about when you give people the opportunity to be in community with each other, more likely than not, community is going to happen. And so just appreciate the work that you all both and others have done to create opportunities for people to find commonalities, not to ignore difficulty, but to find commonalities. So even when I'm in school suspension, I'm not just sitting, I'm not just being neglected. Even if people are reluctantly, sharing why, or resisting sharing why, at least they have the opportunity to try another path. And so that's absolutely fantastic work. And so for the people in the chat, we are going to start to transition towards a Q&A session where you all can jump on, share some things. I am going to encourage you all again, please, questions and praise if you have them, but no comments, no soliloquies, no, don't do what I just did, which is tell an anecdotal story. If we want to do that, we'll create some space for DSC members to engage and share and all that kind of jazz. But my last kind of query for both of you, as we start to open up, is, of course, this work has been codified under this co-governing and co-governance model, report, so on and so forth. And when we were doing the planning session for this, you all both kind of talked about how when you first kind of heard this, you had different responses to that term and that phrasing. So I would love for you all to talk a little bit about, either of you could choose to go first. How did you come to see this work as a form of co-governing toward this idea of a multiracial democracy? Because like you both said, schools are communities that exist in communities. So we can't just get one part of it right and then go out to this very criminalizing, neglected, materially deprived society and then wonder why are children having difficulties? But yeah, so how did you all come to see this work as this co-governance model, and what may be some challenges with it if you still are, as you're still navigating that part?
My first response was, this isn't co-governance. We've pushed our way in, and they let us in, or we couldn't be doing it. But I did not at all look at it as co-governance. I think it was Leah that I had the conversation with, or maybe it was somebody at DSC. So it had to be explained to me. So I'm glad you started with that definition of co-governance, because while we're not elected officials, or we don't have the power to decide what happens inside the schools and inside the district, but I go back to the relationships. We do have the relationships that allow us to operate sometimes on the inside as well as on the outside. And something else that was really important with PEOC and PES relationship, when we were rallying, et cetera, which we didn't have to do around this, they were eventually receptive, is that we have the organizing arm that says go hard. And we have the relationship arm that says gentle pressure applied relentlessly. And the three kind of, along with the school district and their pushback or acceptance, the three worked together in this case in a way that's favorable. So I had to be convinced on the co-governance reference. The interesting thing is our superintendent totally accepted it. She accepts us as internal partners to the district. looking out for the good of the kids and their families. So I'll pass it to Linda to add some stuff there.
All that you said. No, it's just like I just doing the work. I couldn't put a name on it. Just it's something that has to be done. So let's just get it done. But I'm like you said, I'm glad Ben put that definition there. So but yeah, it's just doing the work and just getting it done for the kids.
And bottom line is our children, our
Our
schools.
schools.
So we don't stop at no.
Now, don't take it
We
lightly.
find other ways because they're our kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I love that. I love that. And I just want to bring Ben and Leah back to the fold for anything that you all would like to respond to or add to in the context of this conversation that we've been talking about. So yeah, really it's just an open place and for you to comment on anything you've heard, ask any other maybe small follow-ups to Rosie or Linda before we open it up for everyone else to do the same. So get ready for your quiz. No kidding.
Well, I again appreciate you both so much, Linda and Rosie, and I love your storytelling. I could listen to you all night. I had Philippa Rizopoulos, who's on the line. We had the honor of visiting Paterson and seeing the impact that this work has had through conversations with school-based professionals, staff, teachers, and administrators. And something that really struck me, and I think this comes through in the story that you all just told tonight and also in the case study, is just, and you've mentioned it directly, but the cultural shift. And I think the way that the Paterson folks talked about how thorough that was in the relationships between the students and teachers, between the teachers and administrators. In some ways, those are things that are, and I won't say more powerful than sort of like the policy itself. I mean, I think policy is really important in so much of the ways that we need things to change. But this story, I think, just shows the importance of culture shift in ensuring that the policy changes can really last, right, and that they can actually have an impact on the day-to-day. And I think that was an important lesson that we learned and saw in Paterson. And I know that that's something that other groups will, for instance, the Chinese Progressive Association, in their case study, they talked a lot about that too, around the importance of shifting the way people think about low-wage workers and what's acceptable for workers. How it used to be accepted that workers were making less than minimum wage. They had to make it a crisis for decision makers to really understand. So I think all of that work is incredibly impactful, right? And just shows the multiple sort of fronts that you all had to work and had to struggle in order to make sure that this was something that was going to be sustainable and longstanding. So that's definitely something that strikes me from your story, and huge lesson for me and for us in writing this report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Leah, for that wonderful comment. Ben, just like I said, again, opportunity, if you'd like to add anything or reflect or query, the floor is yours for a minute as well.
Thank you. I'd love to actually ask Linda and Rosie a question. I mean, I think one of the many lessons I've drawn from sort of hearing your story and seeing the work you've done is how long you've been in this work. I mean, you were saying for 18 or more years, I think. And I think it's a good reminder, right, that wins don't always come quickly or easy. But I just find your stick-to-itiveness so impressive. But you mentioned that, you know,
Yeah.
you've actually seen on the school side, right, a lot of administrators and people turn over. And one of the, I think, questions that's been coming up as we've been talking to people about co-governance and asking about their work and talking about the report is a bit of skepticism. I think that a lot of people on the sort of community side have, right, who have seen government often not act in good faith for Black communities, for other communities. And so there's a lot of skepticism, right? And I think that often, I mean, unfortunately, sometimes people in government can be outright hostile, but there's a lot of other cases it feels like where the first answer you're going to get is a no. But there's ways to sort of push through that and sort of, you know, figure out how to build that agreement. And I know you already spoke to this some, but could you say a little more for folks who are sort of maybe hearing this and saying, wow, that worked great in Paterson, but there's so many challenges here where I am. What sort of advice would you offer for folks who are sort of running up into some resistance within government?
Start small.
Mhm.
I'll use our breakfast after the bell campaign. We had lots of community partners and we had people in the school going, no, we can't do that for all kinds of reasons. The garbage, it'll bring rodents, just all kinds of reasons. And we used our relationship. We went to one principal and said, would you try this in your school? And he said yes, and he tried it and it worked. And then I think the second year we went to 5 and then we went 9. And then again, the superintendent, same person who's here now, who was deputy at the time, said, let's do this district-wide. Let's find a way. It's working in these places. So that would be my first advice. We've been trying to get restorative practices in the school for 8 years, right? So it's this year, 7 years from that initial introduction, that it's going district-wide. So patience, persistence, and start small with the people who are ready. It didn't, and I told you I resisted the term, it did not start out as co-governance, and I would never have thought that. As Linda said, we were doing what we had to do and finding different ways to do it.
Thank you for that. Fantastic question, Ben. So yeah, we are actually great on time. And so we have about 25 minutes left, and now it is time for the Q&A section of our conversation. So hopefully you've been jotting down some notes, framing some questions. I do see that we have one that has come from the Q&A section right now from Natalie Chapp from the Dignity in Schools campaign as well. And Natalie asks that several DSC members, that had restorative justice implemented have recently faced a lot of issues and backlash this school year, either because of RJ being looped into the anti-CRT rhetoric or the increase in suspensions and students really struggling in this air quotes post-COVID moment. So how have you all been seeing some of that happening maybe in Paterson, or even anecdotally what you just heard in the landscape, and how are you all and others dealing with that if that's been your experience?
Linda, tell your story of the principal who came to us in Portland and is not implementing.
One, that's, yeah. Well, we have one principal who was fully trained and was so gung-ho on restorative practices, and was just like, that's all she talked about. But however, this year, she was made a principal of a new school, and she has changed the culture. Like, it's almost like she forgot everything that she stood for. She reverted. And so she's, in order of restorative circles, she's doing suspensions. However, but one good thing about it is she is one of the schools that is on the list for us to train soon. So hopefully that we can get back into and to remind her. And every time I have a meeting with her, I remind her that she was one of those leaders. So I think it's easy for them to fall back on that suspensions thing or whatever, because that's what they're so used to doing. But we just have to keep putting the positive and you know, spreading the word that you may not want to do this, but you're going to be mandated. The school will be held accountable, because like Rosa said, they're going to have to answer evaluations. They're going to have to fill out those evaluations to the district, and the superintendent's going to want to know, well, why aren't you doing it? And we're not going to cover for anybody. Either you're doing the work or you're not doing the work. It's as simple as that. You got, you know, they know what they have to do, and we just can't give up. Like Rosa said, our children, our schools, we can't give up.
So I asked
Go ahead.
Linda to share that because we want people to know it's not a bed of roses. You know, not everybody's coming willingly to the
No,
table, but we're now in a position that it's district policy. And so they're going to do it, although reluctantly in some cases. And then the CRT thing, there's some of it happening in New Jersey, but Paterson is a community of 98% children of color. So there's no critical race theory happening. And New Jersey has the advantage of the country's first Amistad law, where 20 years ago, New Jersey legislators said African-American history will be integrated in our classrooms, in our history curriculum. And schools have to figure out how, but we're just seeing the rise of people around CRT, and those of us on the ground are pushing back and saying, that's not what this is. We've been really clear, CRT is not being taught in elementary schools anywhere. It's a college course. And so it's good because we have other partners that are doing that work. We don't have to take the lead there, but we can refer to the materials that they've shared.
Absolutely. No, that makes great sense. No, thank you for that. And yeah, there is that geographic distribution that is important to note. It does have me it reminded me of, and Lynn, you are next in the queue. It does remind me of something I'm going to drop in the chat, which was a conversation, make sure this is the right one. Yes, it is. Around the AP African American Studies course and Florida and all that jazz. There's a really good interview by a professor from the University of Illinois at Champaign and a gentleman by the name of LeGarrette King, who I think works with AERA, but I'm not for sure, doing some stuff around organizing and mobilizing around that. So I just put that in the chat for people to just be aware of. Would definitely invite you to check it out. And if you like it, let's have a discussion about it. But I have talked enough. Lynn, I'm going to bring you to the fold. I'm going to promote you to panelist because I can do such things on this. And if you would like to jump in and say your piece, you are welcome to. So Lynn, the floor is yours.
So before she does, I want to say this is the same Mama Lynn we talked about that brought us the first training.
Absolutely.
There she go. There she go.
Yes, I am that Mama Lynn. I am that one. And I just want to say that my heart is over here jumping and singing, I'm doing my chair dance, all of that. I am so happy with the progress that you all have made. Excuse my lighting is doing something crazy today. I don't know what's going on, but I just wanted to get on here to say, I am so proud. Oh my God, I'm so happy for you, Rosie and Linda. And I just want to put this out in the air. From that definition that was given about co-governance, that is very much a restorative practice. Because restorative practices, in its essence, is about the relationship of all. and us being in community and working together and collaborating together. So that's all I want to say. I'm just so happy because now I have to jump off of this Zoom to get on Zoom with my DSC partners in North Carolina to finish up their training. So
Yes, and thank you so much. I'm telling you, the principals are still talking about that first training whenever we bring it up.
oh,
So-
excellent. I need to come out there and just check it out what y'all doing.
Oh, you absolutely anytime.
Anytime.
Love y'all.
Love,
Love
you too.
you. And love this network, right? This is what this network brings
This
us.
all is what it's all about.
I feel like that's like a perfect setup to be like, and if you'd like to donate to the, no, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding. So yeah, I saw that Marla, you had a question that says, do you think that it's more the topic versus the language? If you are available, I'm having a little trouble understanding what you mean by that. So I'm going to bring you up. And reminder of questions and praise are encouraged. Stories are wonderful and for another time at this time. But Marla, I've given you, I've imbued you with the powers of, maybe I did, hold on, maybe I didn't. There we go. So Marla, if you would like to jump on and frame your question a little bit better for us, so we can try to answer that, I would greatly appreciate it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, what I'm saying, what I'm finding that my question is centered around the fact that I pay very close attention to details, and communications is very important to me because we have various language barriers and comprehensions, understandings, and we have to take into account various dialects from different cultures and what the language means to others. And my question is, do you think is more of the topic or the language that we're using? Because even when you're talking about restorative practices, you're talking about critical race theory, you know, people get it up in an all because of the misinformation of what it means and what it is. So I'm thinking that we're getting too political sized and agenda wise versus understanding the true meaning of what it is we're talking about.
Marla, thank you for that. I have not had anybody confuse restorative practices with critical race theory. And both exist, but we've never had them come together in the way that you're asking. We do talk about language, and language is very important.
Mm-hmm.
In our restorative practices, we emphasize that 80% of it is relationship building. 20% is repairing harm when harm occurs. So in all the schools that we're training, they're spending time weekly in circles, having conversations, building relationships, getting to know each other. The facilitators have prompts to ask. It's just allowing our young people to express themselves and to build trusting relationships with the adults in their lives and with each other. This way, when an infraction happens, they already know the strategy. They know how to act in circles. They've made agreements and they will uphold those agreements. So I think the two are very different things. I understand the confusion around critical race theory, but I won't go into that today. They have not intersected for us.
Okay, because what I'm finding here in Virginia, because we have, believe it or not, we actually have districts from the leaders, from the Commonwealth attorneys that are beginning to implement RJ in the legal system itself. And of course, CRT is a running topic across this nation, but in Virginia, it is really hitting the ceilings. And so when they're talking about the RJ and CRT, it seems like they're merging the two because of the culture or the individuals that more so tend to be targeted, and they're not understanding it's really for to provide all individuals an opportunity. And so that's why I asked that question, because There are some things that I'm working on, and I've been able to work with people at the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, and I'll be holding another event that's going to sort of bring the two topics together, because it is an issue that's being discussed, because we have groups of people that's politicizing them together.
I think the communication is what's important there. Restorative practices are for everybody to use in your communities, in your homes, in your schools. It's relationship building, recognizing harm and repairing harm when harm is caused. So from my perspective, that's the conversation that needs to happen about how different they are. And restorative justice is that harm piece. It's the whole practice is about relationship building. The justice piece is what they're using in the justice system. And it's about people accepting the harm that they've done and finding ways to repair that harm. But there's so much more than that in restorative practices.
Yeah, I truly understand that. I was just, wondering what was you all's take on it, because you're from a different place. And, we do have various things that are occurring under different umbrellas.
Mhm.
And what I'm finding is professionals are not able to isolate what the two are about, because even with CRT, for me as a career educator of over 30 some years, CRT is really about culture sensitivity and awareness, and understanding and allowing all groups to be equally presented, and bringing the truth about history. And so that's why I asked that, because they have a lot of things that this government, politics, and all these folks are doing everything that they, everything they can grasp their hand at, and not giving everything its value.
I'm right there with you, my sister. Just remember, you can't convert everybody. So focus on the people you can convert.
Okay, well, I've been working with the government folks. and believe it or not, yes, to our newly elected Congresswoman, she's agreed to be a guest speaker at one of my events. So I'm just waiting for her to give me a date. So
Awesome.
yeah, so she's on board with RJ and counseling and support, and things of that nature.
Fantastic.
It reminds me of one of the things, one of the gems that I pulled out from, and thank you for your questions and your back and forth, Marla. I think it helped unravel a lot of really important things. And like you were saying, Rosie, that kind of like working with the willing earlier on it's starting with the willing. It's a really, really fantastic strategy because then you can grow your ranks, you can grow your strength, which can prepare you for the bigger fights, because as we know that, everyone doesn't want this. There are some people that are not just fine or indifferent around the status quo being what it is. They want to further entrench a more restrictive, more punitive, more conservative, more whitewashed version of events. And so, Marla, I think what you're bringing up as well is just like that landscape analysis piece, that it is important to hold both, and remember that in local communities there may be slightly unique dynamics that are going on that can be inference points for ways to again gently apply pressure relentlessly. So keep fighting the good fight, and I really do appreciate that. And we are closer to the end than we are the beginning, so there are about 10. I got you, Marla. If you can't put that in the chat, I'm gonna let you put it there so we can make room for a few other people that may want to jump in. Your appreciation is noted, so I'm not accepting your appreciation. Want to check and see if there's anyone else in the chat that has a query or a question or a comment or compliment that they'd like to throw into the fold as we get ready to move towards closure. This will be our last one, but if not, then we can move towards closing a touch early. So let's see, I see Marla in the chat, great session. Yes, thank you, Marla. All right, I see nothing from Andre, Ashley, Betty, Cheryl, Mama Janice, Milagro. All right, so let's do it like this then. So we don't have to end at 6:30 and a little touch earlier. So Want to bring everyone back up to the fold again, just for not even necessarily closing remarks per se, but I do want to say thank you to each of you, and to those that are not on the screen, Philippa, Ruth, who couldn't make it today, for all of your work, labor, time, and energy for putting this together, both this event, the report, and the work, because I do think these kinds of deep dive sessions and like shared learning experiences do also, I think, do a great job of reminding people like that there are places where we may not get all that we want, but we are winning in some areas, winning in a lot of areas. So, and it's important to celebrate, codify, and study the wins just as much as we mourn and look at and analyze where things didn't quite work out, and remembering what's in our sphere of control and doing that to the best of our ability. So a couple of quick reminders. Again, the report, the Paterson section is in the Zoom chat for you to download. It should have been in the Zoom registration. If you didn't get that, I can share that with you again. I'll put it in the chat momentarily. There's a longer form event of this that is happening on the 28th. Ben, if you could possibly share that flyer again, and I will put the link to register for that again. That's a public facing one, as I said before. It goes a bit broader than what we've focused in on for USDSC members tonight. And it is an incredibly important, oh, yeah, perfect, thank you, Ben, for that. And yeah, now I will say if there are any other closing remarks or things that you'd like to share, please do so. And if not, then we can get ready to get out of here.
Safari, I want to share the third one, which is a conversation with my superintendent and me. That's also public facing. And I don't know if anybody has that link, Ben might or Leah. I'm looking forward to that one because it'll be a good conversation between the in-district leader and us as the community partner.
Can we co-host? Can we support you co-hosting that?
That actually, I don't have a link to that. That one is for the government folks in the Government Alliance for Race and Equity. So that link will be forthcoming. I don't unfortunately have the link to that. I apologize for that, but I'm looking forward.
Oh no, I put you on the spot. Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that also.
Word, well, yeah, do let us know if there's anything that we at DSC can do to support that. No, it's fantastic. Great. So Linda, Ben, Leah.
No, so
all right. All right. Well, again, thank you all so much for spending a Thursday afternoon with us. Hope that you're well. Hope that your families are well. Hope that the people that don't want the policies that we want to pass, may they slip on bananas. And in all seriousness, no, may we continue to have the health that we need, the family and the communities that we need to bring these victories to our people now and in the future. So thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of the evening and take care.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye,
all.
everybody.
Peace.